Good evening and welcome to Stage One Family Theater's Theater for Everywhere Artist Panel, where we're going to discuss what it's like to make theater for young audiences during a pandemic. I'm Sam Corbett, and I have the honor and pleasure of serving on the board of directors of Stage One. And tonight, I have the pleasure of being your moderator as we discuss what's happening with four incredible artists from Stage One, who you'll meet in just a second. But that's Allison Anderson, Allison Sims, Corey Harrison, and Karl Anderson. Before we begin, let us acknowledge with respect as a non-native person that the lands on which we stand, live, and learn are the traditional territory of the Shawnee, Cherokee, Chickasaw, and Osage nations. We acknowledge that indigenous people have always called this land home, as they do today. So let's meet tonight's outstanding panel. And I'm going to ask each one of them to introduce themselves. And we'll start with Allison Sims. Allison, say hello and tell us what you do.
Hello, I am Allison Sims, and I was the prop designer. I am also the lead production technician here at Stage One and for Theater for Everywhere.
Well, welcome. Corey, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Corey Harrison. I'm the sound designer for Theater for Everywhere, and I also have the immense pleasure of being the associate artistic director for Stage One.
And then we get two for the price of one, folks, with Allison and Karl Anderson. And don't they look good sitting there? Especially with the prop that Karl added in the background. Lean over so we can see the tree. Very nice. Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Karl Anderson. Was the scenic designer for Theater for Everywhere, as well as the technical director.
And I'm Allison Anderson. I was the costume designer for Theater for Everywhere and the costume shop manager.
All right, let's start our conversation tonight, where I want to ask the four of you all to talk to the audience about what the difference was in creating and working on these three productions, where they were being recorded and then they were going to be distributed virtually or digitally. How is that different than the traditional main stage production that we've all been familiar with for many, many years on the stage at the Kentucky Center? Talk about the differences. Let's start with Allison Sims.
Yeah, the first thing that kind of jumps out at me was that in theater, we have the grace of the 10-foot rule, that our nearest audience member is going to be, the closest they're going to be is 10 feet away. And so you can kind of get away with a little bit more because you've got that 10 feet. Whereas when it comes to filming, when I think about it, I don't know where the camera's going to be. I don't know how close the camera's going to be because we're going to want to like some close-up shots. So you have to be a bit more meticulous in a way that you maybe don't when it comes to plays because your nearest audience member is 10 feet away.
What about you, Corey?
Well, with the audience not being there, there's a whole lot of energy that isn't in the room. And so the pacing of a show is a lot different. And so it's just creating the sound and music for these pieces. It was all about being more selective and being very specific about where we put things so we don't distract from the audience who's watching it on video. But at the same time, we keep that energy alive and keep us moving that since the audience wasn't actually in the room with us.
And Karl, Allison, what about you?
Well, for me, a lot of it was the same as Allison Sims, that everybody can see things a lot closer, and so detail was a little more important. And while these weren't really super detailed costumes, it was all contemporary clothes. Things like when we were doing quick changes backstage, we just had to be a lot more sure that everything was just right. Because if you mess up a little bit on a fast change in live theater, you know, the audience might not notice so much if the wig's a little bit crooked, but if it's on film, you're definitely going to see it. So part of there was a definite nervousness a little bit more tension in some of the fast changes because of that. But it all turned out great.
Karl?
Yeah, and design-wise process, I don't think I did much differently because some of the intention was these might go tour schools in our initial talks. So I didn't really do anything different visually for filming necessarily, but the challenge with the situation was that we were sort of putting them in rep. Like we could have changed out the 3 shows in one day if we wanted to. Even though we were filming one day at a time, we could have switched over to another show in 10 or 15 minutes, and that was just the nature of the beast.
Let me call on Allison Sims. I'm going to put you on the spot and make you pick one of the 3 productions and talk to us, tell the audience kind of what was your inspiration for the designs on the show that you're going to pick.
So I think across the board on all 3, and then I'll pick one, but across the board on all 3, a lot of our decisions were made because at one point we thought this was going to tour. And in the conversations about touring, everything had to fit in a person's car. So that really defines what can be in and what can be not in, because if it's got to fit in a car, we have to think about how things are made, and we can't go to directors or playwrights and say, you can have everything. Like, no, it's got to be confined into a car. That being said, I think one of my favorite things that I got to work on was in Reframe, where the wigs, there was a moment where a table of wigs rolls out, and it was very fun to research the wigs and decide what cultures I wanted to represent in the wigs. I've also never worked with wigs before. It was a lot of fun to it was a lot of YouTube videos of me trying to figure out what was going on, but it was also a lot of fun to learn this process. And that's, the best part about theater is that I get to learn something new every single time I work on a show. But when it comes to Reframe, that was really one of the big things that I was tasked with, was figuring out 4 different cultures of wigs and how to style them and get them on stage. So that I really enjoyed that, and I really enjoyed thinking through the inspiration of what cultures I wanted to see. So that was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun doing the wigs.
Corey, let me ask a quick follow-up question. How much time did you guys have between the point where you determined we're not going to be able to perform in schools, this is not going in the back of the car, and we're actually going to shoot this at the center and film it and send it out virtually? How much time did you all have as a staff to kind of put all that together?
We were right in the middle of the process. We, as everybody else, kind of all the other performing arts groups going through the same year that we had, it was one of those where we're dealing with that ever-evolving information. And I think the way it worked was we were kind of in the middle of workshops and rewrites in July, thinking that we were going to still be able to tour this, and then figuring out that, no, we saw that second spike come in. We're like, we're going to have to go to video and stick pretty much straight to video and make this kind of a way for students to virtually experience the arts. And so from that, I would say late July, and then we were in rehearsals by mid-August, late August, and filming in September. So it was a quick shuffle for our timeline.
Right, that's what I would assume.
6 to 8 weeks.
Okay. All right, so I must confess that I was wearing my mask and I was social distancing, but I was able to sneak in and watch the actual filming of Monster of Mine. So I was a live studio audience of illegally in the Arts Center. Don't tell people at the Kentucky Center. Allison Anderson.
It's just between us.
Yeah, just between the let's see, 5 of us and hopefully thousands of people that are going to watch this. So Allison Anderson, I got to know as a grandparent, because I want to take these things home sometime and to my grandchildren, talk to us about creating the puppets, because they are so cool that, as I say, I'd like to have a couple actually sitting right behind me as background. How did you come up with those ideas?
Well, actually, Karl ended up sketching those up early in the process. I think maybe even before we'd had any real like official production meetings with the playwrights and the directors. He just had some ideas about what they ought to be and sketched up some really great stuff. And they were perfect because we knew that they were going to have to get put on stage. We weren't quite sure how that was going to work yet, but it turns out they had to be stored in boxes that were part of the set on stage, and the actors themselves had to take them out of the boxes and get them on by themselves while they're doing dialogue in a moment when the character was like either angry or bored or whatever it was that the monster was supposed to be representing. So it turned, I mean, I actually do a lot of creatures and some mascot work and stuff like that. So this was definitely right up my alley. And there's me modeling the mock-up of one of the monsters. That was the first one that we tried out to see how it would work. They're based on baseball hats. They're basically like a hat and a coat and gloves all attached together, and then you just kind of put them on like a coat and put the hat on, and then you have this monster. So that was, and the actors used them so perfectly. They just knew what to do. It was really wonderful to have them wearing them exactly the way we were hoping that it would work out.
They did a really good job, I thought, of like developing a character and then the character still maintained once they got the puppet on.
Yeah, yeah, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like,
they brought them to life.
Collaboration between actor and what you two had created.
It's always so delightful as someone who as the creator of creatures like that, when to see the performer put that creature on and the performer just disappears and they become that creature, because we could still see the actors' faces.
Yeah.
But they really worked with the head to put their heads down and back up. And it was wonderful.
So let me take the liberty of asking our technical director, Kate, if she would throw that sketch image up that Karl created, because I have a particular question about the one on my right, the green-eyed jealousy monster. Where you need to make the note says, make the fur more yellow. But Karl, I've got to know, is it a situation where you can't sleep at night and at 3:30 you come up? I mean, where does this stuff come from?
Don't know.
As a non-artist, where does this come from?
I have to, whether this is admitting something, that was the easiest thing in the world for me to spit out monsters like that. And it's from childhood. Like, I think Jim Henson is probably one of the most inspirational American artists that I can think of. And the script was pretty particular about how they were worn and how they're going to work. And so I think I just thought color and shape, because I was just in the groove of it. And once you get past having a Cookie Monster or a Grover, then you get past that, and then you get the other ones. The first one, the one that's blue and kind of big eyes like Cookie Monster, is actually, it's obviously one of the most effective because it kind of comes from that Sesame Street feel. Our teeth and our claws really added a lot to it, though, and the portrayal and the acting was perfect. But once I got through that, then the other ones I think were more developed, even the point where the note on the jealousy, jealousy's a green-eyed monster, but I made the fur green. I was just kind of like going spitball wise. And so then we came up with like a balancing act where the purple and something that's not so green, and they come together to make this one weird creature. So it became like almost all theater executions, a very collaborative effort with the director and with costumes. Everyone was involved in kind of fine-tuning those monsters.
Well, you did an outstanding job. They're great.
Thank you.
Let me jump over to Corey a minute, and let's talk about in the second production, Reframe, the sound that you used is a critical part of that production. Talk to us a little bit about how that came about.
Well, it was definitely inspired by the script. I mean, the script is incredibly clever, written by Jada Dixon, and she created this wonderful, fantastic character called Mrs. Big Hair Don't Care, and it's larger than life. A lot of the times in my shows that I've had experience, sound sometimes plays a major role, and we reference it by saying like, oh, it's like another character in the cast, or it's another character. This one was a lot different because it was an extension of the character. I mean, it very much played directly with Mrs. Big Hair Don't Care. She was always attached to those sounds. They were always following her. Kate, our wonderful stage manager, I think has a great clip that we're going to watch, kind of give you an idea of what I'm talking about.
Whoa! Where are we?
I'm not.
Principal Walker?
What's that? Oh! Hello. That is always such a bumpy ride. All right. Hello. Yes. Yes. Let's get to the business at hand.
Who are you?
Yeah, and where are we?
So you can kind of see how much fun that is. I mean, that character, just that the actress Mandy brought so much energy to that character, bigger than life, pushed it out there. And so we had to create those sounds to kind of keep up with it. And they're very much inspired by a game show. These are two very different students trying to discover what makes them the same and how to kind of coexist and respect and really embrace each other's differences. And so it's framed as kind of a game show. And so we decided to jump into game show sounds. And I'm Generation X. I was brought up on, Family Feud and Wheel of Fortune and Price is Right and those sort of things. And today's kids, to connect with them, we chose to go more of a video game route. So we took video game noises and applied them in as a game show, if you will.
So is that something that the first time you read the script, you said, oh, that's the direction I need to go? Or did that evolve over time as you were working through the production? And as you just said,
I think it evolved over time. Yeah, I think it evolved over time. I think, when I first read the scripts, scripts are meant to be heard and seen, I guess, more than read. And so being able to get in the rehearsal hall and watch how those words jumped off the page and what the actors were doing with them, there was a light bulb moment where I was like, oh, it's a game show. What took me so long to get that?
To speak to that, Corey, when I read the script, I did not think like game show sounds, and was surprised you were going. I mean, it made a little sense once I saw the full thing, but this is how collaboration works, and this is why people have assigned jobs and we all work together. It did not occur to me that it should be like
it was one of those like crazy moments there. You were talking about the wigs earlier, when they do the reveal on the wigs and we have diversity come up, and it's just kind of like, oh yeah, oh my bad, spoilers everybody who hasn't seen it, sorry about that, I'm bad about them. But yes, that's that moment where I was just kind of like, oh, like what's behind door number 2?
Yeah, it didn't read that way in the script, which is funny to me.
Mm-hmm. So Corey, in the interest of full disclosure for our audience, at your advanced stage, did you have to consult with some younger folk to know exactly what video game music should sound like?
You know what? I am a gamer, but I try to stay humble and realize that I am also way out of date. I expired my prime a while back. Okay. Luckily, my son, who actually got to write the original music on Monster of Mine, and he's 13, and he kept me in check. I'd be like, hey, what's this, blah, blah, and he'd be like, oh, that's from this game. I'd be like, oh, okay, great. Luckily, the kids these days are pretty hip. They're still connected with Zelda and Mario Brothers and that sort of stuff.
Okay. All right, Karl, let's talk a little bit about the third production, The Right Shoes, because in that case, the scenic design that you landed on is much more literal than the other two. Right. Can you tell us a little bit about how you arrived there, how you made
that? Sure. The script was very particular in the locations. There was the classroom and sort of the schoolyard, and there was home. You saw them at home and school and the playground. So my initial concept, we were having 3 walls, basically 3 panels, and so I went really literal with that. And I think that it was just in the storybook fashion sometimes. I kind of just got the imagery of these literal places, and once the scale, kind of was a little bit out of whack, and with meetings with Andrew and Corey, being artistic directors before the directors were signed on for these shows, we thought that the scale should be brought down and be more personable. And at that point, I really thought the scale of Charles Schultz Peanuts comic strip was kind of right on, and I even leaned into that color scheme. And so it's literal, but it has the feel where you just see the edge of a door, a little bit of a window, and the school sign, and you kind of have the classroom in the background as sort of the backdrop. And then the color scheme kind of fell into a, for lack of a better term, like a primary color scheme. There was kind of a yellow, kind of a red, kind of a blue, and you can kind of get the feeling of the comic strip Peanuts. I think that the truth of those characters kind of was a little bit analogous to the truth in the characters in the play. So it wasn't a big stretch. And for me, when you see it in the reality, I think that it served really well, because it's not really picture book, and it's in a cartoon world, but I think that the kids belong there. It's the right size for them, and it's not a complete picture. And so I think that there's some gaps that were filled in, and it became, one of my favorite children.
We want to leave a few minutes for some questions from our audience. So we're going to have what I'm calling the rapid fire round, where you can only give me a title, no editorial comment, no explanation, just the title. Because obviously what I'm going to ask you to do is, if you had to do it over again, having been involved in these 3 productions, which one would you want to do again? All right, let's go in reverse order. Let's start with Karl. Which one, Karl?
Would I want to design again? Probably Reframed. I think, like that had a high concept of sort of a mural of, everybody's hair, and, like everyone sort of embracing differences and similarities. And in some ways, to me, it blends in with the characters, and I wish I could maybe think of the color scheme in a little bit offset than active.
Right. What about you, Allison Anderson? Which one?
Maybe The Right Shoes, just because it was a fun show, and I enjoyed. I enjoyed all the shows, but it would be fun to do that one again.
Corey?
I'm going to go with Monster of Mine, because I, as a sound designer, got to work with my son as a composer, and check that off the bucket list. That was a great moment, and it was really creative and wonderful. I would definitely do that again.
So Corey, you said that your son is, at least at that point, he was 13.
Yeah, he still is.
So could we just encourage him to skip school, forget college, and come straight into the stage 1 production world? And
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Knock the old man out of the picture.
I don't need that kind of steep competition, that stiff competition right now. I think
Understood.
that it's more important that he figures out my retirement plan and goes to as much schooling as he can go to.
I get that. All right, what about you, Allison Sims? Which one would you pick?
I guess, maybe Reframe. I had a lot of fun on Reframe. It was fun to do. It was fun to figure out the wigs. It was fun to make the big poster boards. But I had fun on all of them. I always have fun.
Well, isn't that what it's about?
Yeah.
Okay, let me ask Kate. She just put up there if we have any audience questions. Here we go. From Keith.
There we go.
There. Keith's question: how much do you feel you need to have prepared when you have your first meeting with a director? Well, since you guys are winging most of this, I think I know the answer.
Right.
What's
I usually try to have what maybe a shared concept is, and then I try to maybe have one of my own that might help a director, complete their own concept or vision. I mean, there's sometimes things that you kind of have an impulse on how it should look, but then I try to have one alternate reality version.
What about you, Allison Sims?
I want to have read the script. That's always very important in the first meeting of a director, is I want to have read the script. And like Karl says, I want there's like a loose interpretation of what I think is happening. And then you kind of want to wait to hear the director's vision. That's really going to set you on a track. Because they could be thinking Monty Python and I could be thinking like SpongeBob SquarePants. So you definitely want to, those are just two random examples, but you definitely want to hear what your director's vision is before you start going down a lane. So I basically want the script read.
I think one of the most fun things about the design process actually is some of those first concept meetings, because you can read the script and have an idea about it, and then the director can have a completely different idea. And I might go, if I have any specific ideas, I'll definitely go in with maybe a little research, maybe a few ideas about something. But if I hear something completely different, suddenly other things come in your head, and it's really fun to just start brainstorming right there about something you just hadn't even thought of, or a way you hadn't read the script at all. I think that's one of the most wonderful, fun things about the whole collaborative process of designing with a whole team of people.
Because it's all connected, because I have to hear what Karl, like if Karl's set designing, I have to hear what he's doing so that my props match what he, like, it's all connected. What are the costumes doing? What's the set doing? All right. And the props have to live in the same world that the costume designer and the set designer came up with. So best part about theater, it's all collaboration.
Corey, were these directors that you had worked with before, or was this a new experience with these directors?
We had worked with two of the directors before, and but all three playwrights, if I'm not mistaken, this was their debut with Stage One. And one new director with us on this was LaShondra Hood. She was on Reframe. And connecting the sound with that, it was, I always like to harken back to this really nerdy reference. Robert Edmund Jones is the godfather or the grandfather of technical theater. And he said that, every show has to go through like a water-like metamorphosis. And that's what I always like to consider is when all of the pieces start coming together, the direction, the acting, the costuming, the lighting, the sound, the props. And all of a sudden, they start informing one another, and it finds that balance, and it comes out just kind of a whole new beautiful picture. And LaShondra I was really surprised. It was one of the first times in a rehearsal process I've seen a director invite the cast to explain their character through sound, and she would have the actors bring in some music. And so there was half of a rehearsal where we just explored music with each other, and it's that sort of thing that's really impactful on your design moving forward. So. Yeah.
Corey, quick question, because I was aware of this, but you mentioned all three of the playwrights. This is the first play they've done?
No, the first play they've done with Stage One.
With Stage One?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So was that intentional on Stage One's part to select playwrights who they'd never worked with before? Just quickly talk
Not
about
necessarily.
how that came about.
I think, I think it's more of the, like, we knew the stories we wanted to tell. We went out and we kind of found subject matters that teachers and students wanted to know about and were attracted to. And then we talked to some playwrights, and we wanted to find playwrights who were motivated, who were impassioned behind these subjects and had a real story to tell. And they came together quick, and you could tell that, through the writing. And it was like, I think one of the plays, the original version was written very quickly, but then of course there's 2 months working with our dramaturg.
Right.
They got them developed. So I don't think it was as much as we specifically chose them as they kind of chose us. They heard what we had going on, and they were really excited about the project, and we were like, let's do it. I like their voice,
Great. All right, unfortunately, we just have time for one more question. So this is from Jana. All right, this is a great question. Looking ahead, what are you guys cooking up? What are you working on now for next season, for next year?
What are we like each individually designing right
Yeah, real quick.
now? All right, Anderson's go. They got a good answer.
I'm at Kentucky Shakespeare Festival. Shakespeare in Love is designed and opening June 17th, and Henry V is in the process of some design. And I have a call with the director tonight at 9 o'clock to talk about Grapes of Wrath production that I'm helping facilitate.
That's you, Allison.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not actually designing anything right now, but I am working in the costume shop at Kentucky Shakespeare Festival, which is actually something I've wanted to do for a long time and have just never had. I've usually been booked up in the summer, and we're just coming out of this pandemic. This happened just to be, I was free. So I've been in the shop for a week, and it's just been great. I'm really enjoying it.
What about you, Corey?
I've got a couple of exciting projects cooking right now. Both of them are with Stage One, surprise, surprise. And we're doing our storytellers with the zoo is kicking off, a special endangered species version. And that's happening this Friday. We've got a couple of other pop-ups in and around Louisville, so keep your eyes out for it because it's really fun. Getting back to live performance, can we all just applaud for that? Let's get that going again. And then an immense undertaking every year is our Summer Drama Works camps that run all summer long. And as Associate Artistic Director, I get to be intimately involved with that this year from every aspect. So lots of moving parts and amazing collaborators and instructors. So it's going to be a good summer.
How about you, Allison?
My answer is very similar to Corey's. I got to design and make the props and costumes for the storytellers, the Endangered Species Day at the zoo. I have a very fun giraffe hat, I think. That I made, and some unicorn heads. And then every summer for the past 4 or 5 summers, I do the set costumes and props for the production, for the performance camps at Stage One. I always have a blast, and I always feel a little in over my head, but I surface eventually. So
good problems to have. Well, I want to thank all 4 of you for being with us tonight and sharing your experiences. We also want to obviously thank the sponsors of Theater for Everywhere, because without them, many of them are listed on the screen. And their financial support, they made this whole exciting process possible. If you're at home and you're saying, well, I haven't seen Theater for Everywhere, well, it's available via streaming. You can purchase it until June the 2nd, so there's not a lot of time left. You want to jump on it. And if you have any other questions, I'll bet you could probably go to stage1.org and get all the answers that you need. Thanks again for joining us tonight, and have a great summer.